Normal redditors that dated a celebrity, what was it like? Please like, subscribe and comment so I can create more videos for you. My wife briefly dated Louis C.K. back in 2012. She says it seems kind of awful to be famous. Anytime they went out to eat or were in public they were just constantly interrupted or stared at. He came to her day party at some little bowling alley in Brooklyn though and was pretty cool. The story that always sticks with me is that one day he went out and bought a $150,000 watch because he felt sad. Wow, that's surreal. How did she react to all the scandal he was involved in semi-recently? Not a romantic date in the least, but I had dinner once at a Japanese restaurant, in a group setting, with Leonardo Dicaprio while he was in Louisiana filming Django Unchained. He wanted to know what college was like and was asking us all about our lives. He also let me try his Hilton. It was my first ever Instagram post. He really is such a nice guy in the limelight, and in real life it felt like we were hanging out with our friend. I love this. I was working at a coffee shop in New Orleans while they were filming Django and a lot of the crew stayed in the condos above the shop, one of which being Leo's assistant, and I remember her being super sweet. Walton Goggins also made it part of his routine to come get a latte every morning before shooting. I didn't really know his work before, but he was so nice and kind that I am a fan for life now. When shooting wrapped he came in for one last latte and we all hugged and cried and took a photo. That was peak Hollywood South era. Salma Hayek is my dad's childhood friend. They grew up together in Coatzacoalcos, Veracruz. They never dated but they have remained acquaintances if not friends. I never believed him they were friends until one day we ran into her in the airport and she invited us for dinner. She is a really nice person and a lot of fun to hang out with. My uncle hooked me up to see Foreigner in 1981, including 2 backstage passes. I took a girl I really liked but she ended up meeting Mick Jones and disappearing with him into a dressing room. I didn't see her again that night. So I guess you could say I got fucked by Mick Jones. Edit. Her side of the story was that she went with him into another room where people were drinking and smoking, and he ignored her after that. She said she stayed there 20 minutes, then left and couldn't find me, and I had ditched her. So just to be clear, I'm not accusing Mick of doing anything inappropriate. That's her story and her mother believed it enough to call my mother to complain about it, so yeah, that's what must have happened. I guess she wanted to know what love is and he'd clearly been waiting for a girl like her. Hooked up with a chick who was in a soap opera a few times. Didn't know it at the time but recognized her when I was at my grandmother's and she had her show playing. Not me, but my aunt dated Matthew McConaughey before he was famous. He ended up getting invited to her wedding to my normal uncle, and proceeded to pass out drunk in the back of my family's car. He refused to leave, and now my dad refuses to watch his movies. Why is it aunts in the top 3 stories? Aunts seem to be having a great time. My aunt went on a date with Jimmy Buffett. She said he picked her up, stopped at a gas station, bought a jar of pickles and then drove to the beach. They ate pickles and he took her home. A few years ago I was getting on a flight back to San Diego after my cousin's wedding. I was very hungover and judging people as I walked to my gate. I see this long-haired man stride by me in a purple button-down and think, who's this? Cupcake. Not a sexuality comment, just a shirt color comment. As he walks by I realize, holy shit, that's Fabio. A bit later, after getting a snack, my brazen and probably still drunk self saw him sitting at his gate and just sat down next to him. I look away, then right at him and say, "You're Fabio," and he says so coolly, "Yes I am," and shakes my hand. We proceeded to talk for 30 minutes until he had to leave. He was so intelligent. Discussed cancer therapies in depth, and I recall thinking, just nod and smile, Fabio is way smarter than you, just nod and smile. Before leaving he asked for my number and texted me the next day for a date. Nothing ever came of it, but I still have his number in my phone. My dad followed up for weeks to make sure I wasn't dating the man on every romance novel cover. Extended family members completely fawned over Fabio for way too long at a restaurant in LA years ago. He was really nice about it. I was really embarrassed by it. We all lived to tell the tale. My friend's sister-in-law was out jogging when some other random dude came up and jogged with her and talked with her about random stuff like the movie being filmed nearby at the time for a bit. After a bit of that, he said, "Oh, by the way, I hope you like the movie." They were filming The Force Awakens and she only realized later that it was Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford is the only man in the world that can do to me whatever he wants. What a gorgeous guy. I had an English teacher that went on a date with Mark Hamill just after filming Star Wars in the 70s. She said he was a nice guy and was very humble. He said he was a small-time actor and said he had just finished a new movie that he thought might be successful. They only went out once and she never heard from him again. Saw him in Star Wars a few months later and had her mind blown. I've heard nothing but great things about the guy. Thing is, your story really emphasizes how humble he is. An actor who just finished a movie would probably be more likely to talk about it, and himself, non-stop. Instead he thought it might be successful. Didn't ramble on and on about the story and how he is the star. Sheesh. A neighbor of mine was an extra in a local commercial 20 years ago and he pulls an Al Bundy every chance he can get to talk about it. So then I had to tell the director that the camera angles were all wrong. Don't get me started on the girl who played the daughter. She couldn't get the lines right. The commercial played during the Tonight Show for 3 weeks straight. It was an auto parts commercial, Frank. Get over it. The store has been closed for 7 years. My friend's aunt went on a blind date with Gerard Butler, circa 300, the movie, not the year. There was a big miscommunication. Because he was looking for a hookup and she's a kindly French-Canadian woman in her 50s, but they both had a laugh about it and enjoyed supper with each other. She said he was very kind, and very muscular. I know some French-Canadian looking girl in her 50s who went on a date with him too. Flew her out to Scotland too or something like that. Lol. Bumble, ghosted. The second naturally follows the first. Joking, slightly. My aunt was married engaged to Van Morrison briefly. Here they are together on this album artwork. WordPress webpage. No interesting stories that I could remember. They were in love but given he was always gone so the challenges that come with fame. His personality quirks documented in many places, and my aunt's young age at the time, 20, it didn't work out. I was told that he would play guitar for the fam on Christmas get-togethers. Edit. Obligatory holy crap this blew up. I could probably get her to do an AMA if people are really interested. Edit 2. Correction. Engaged, not married. Edit 3. More clearing up the record after talking more to my aunt. Wait, is that album Vegan Fleece? That is an amazing album. So he wrote you don't pull no punches, you don't push the river for your aunt. I would swoon if that happened. Cool story, man. Probably too late for this, but, about 15 years ago, when the show The Simple Life, with Paris Hilton and Nicole Richie was popular, I made out with Paris Hilton at a nightclub in Baltimore. Essentially, they were filming them doing all sorts of random jobs around the country and staying with local families, all for the culture clash laughs. One of those families ended up being my friend and her family. Being a close friend, and a well-known admirer of Paris at the time, I was invited over and got to hang with her and Nicole Richie a good amount while they were in town. Both of them were super sweet, and a lot smarter than they played for the camera. Paris was a great kisser and this story is always a hit with my friends. A few months later, her phone was hacked and nudes were leaked. My number was in her phone book and I got spammed with prank calls from 4chan, or something. I imagine it was a lot worse for anyone who was actually famous. Anyhow, basically lost total contact after that. But still a fun story. Holy shit, I totally remember that. I think she called you Shaggy or something like that. I remember a nickname. Haven't thought about that since it aired. Memory is weird. Edit. It was Chops. I went back and looked up the episode. It's actually streaming free on Tubi. Tubi is the largest free movie and TV streaming service in the US. We are not available in Europe due to changes in EU laws. Web page, about 8 minutes into COP. John Krasinski liked my Venmo donation to his charity, so it's basically like we're dating. A friend of mine banged Matthew McConaughey. She's a costumer in Hollywood and was hanging out in the bar at Chateau Marmont when Matt comes up to her and says, "How about you and me walk 30 feet and get naked?" Her initial response was lol no, but by the end of the night her friends convinced her she had to do it. This was peak 2000s Matt when he was ripped and constantly shirtless. So she went up to his room at the hotel and they banged. Apparently it was sweaty, mostly from behind, and he preferred to watch them, mostly him, in the mirror. Same girl also dated McGee from Sis, but apparently he was a total sweetheart. Years ago at a hotel bar party I saw Elisha Cuthbert. Sent a bottle of vodka to her table. Upon learning it was me who sent it, she motioned me over to her table. Promptly asked me if I was a drug dealer. Told me I was dressed like a bum. And sent me back to my table with my bottle of vodka. That was my date with Elisha. I guess we just weren't meant to be. Edit. To answer some of your questions, I don't think she was looking for drugs. She said something like, "Besides dealing drugs, what are you doing here?" I was like 20 at the time, and a bit overconfident. This was roughly 13 years ago I think. I am not creepy, haha. I saw a hot celebrity, was a little drunk, and took a swing. A lot of "she's a bitch" comments. I wouldn't call her a bitch for turning down the advances of some random dude that is 4 years younger than her. I also later found out that she was dating an NHL hockey player at the time. I never stood a chance. My mom dated Keanu Reeves back in high school. She broke up with him because he was too focused on his band with his friends at the time. If only. My mom lived in Key West in the early mid-80s. She dated Sting for a while. He had a really nice yacht and they went on a sailing trip during which he realized my mom is psycho. She is. Dart. He ended it right after. Sometimes to fuck with my dad I'll start singing Roxanne or Message in a Bottle. Is your dad still with your psycho mom? I have a psycho mother, no judgment. I have a friend whose great-great-grandma was in a relationship with Joseph Stalin. Edit. She ran off to America with another man. If her family is still around, the breakup couldn't have been too bad. Edit. Thanks for the silver. Not dated for any of these stories, but semi-related. My mom went to a party with Janis Joplin. She said she was wild, funny, but crude, and smelled like she hadn't showered or brushed her teeth in weeks. Janis Joplin died not long after. I went to university in Westchester, PA. Seeing Bam Margera, Ryan Dunn, and crew was a relatively common sight. The first time I saw them was the same night I got the call from my parents telling me that my family dog was put down, very old, very sick. Dart. My friends took me out drinking and we ran into Bam and crew. Bam asked why I was down and when I told him, he bought my drinks for the rest of the night. I went out bar hopping with them a few times after that. They were nice, but wild. Could never quite prepare myself for a night out with them. Ryan was as kind as could be and absolutely hilarious. Not me, but my cousin dumped Elvis Stojko, figure skater, before he became a thing to date the guy who became her husband. She always found it weird to see him in the Olympics. My cousin was hit on by Shaq at a festival. When she pointed out that he was married, he allegedly said, "I'm Muslim. I'm allowed to have many wives." My aunt met Shaq and she's a solid 5 foot tall petite woman. When I saw the picture of them I bursted out laughing because she looks like a child next to him. Charlize Theron flirted with me when I was an extra in her first movie. She was a nobody and had a really small role. Then her makeup or assistant told me I was lucky for that. I was shy and backed away because it was odd having a girl hit so hard on me. So yeah. My wife sent fucked David herself off 30 odd years ago. She worked in the television industry. She is now a lesbian, lol. A family friend's mom went clubbing with Lady Gaga. Afterwards, Gaga asked if she knew who she was. Friend's mom had no idea. My aunt is very good friends with Anthony Kiedis' mom. She has no clue who Red Hot Chili Peppers are. To be fair, she can't name one Rolling Stones song and she grew up in the 60s, so her music compass is a bit broken. Damn, I'm so late and I know this will get buried, but when my mom's aunt died they were going through her stuff and found a picture of her sitting on JFK's lap. No one knew anything about it. My college roommate's cousin, I believe, went on a date, maybe multiple dates, with Armie Hammer before he blew up in the social network, and apparently he forgot all about the date. They went on, and when he tried to introduce himself to her at another encounter, she said something along the lines of, "I know, we used to date. Pretty sure the guy is married now." One of my former best friends owns a luxury condo in Vegas, and Armie Hammer owns the condo right above hers. She has had to talk to him on multiple occasions, because he likes to throw cigarette butts from his patio, and they land on hers. In the 3 or 4 times she's spoken to him, he's never remembered who she is. Seems like his memory isn't exactly the best. My old English teacher is good friends with Serge Tankian and lead singer of System of a Down, and she always talked about having coffee with him, and I'm still jealous to this day. My dad and older brother did some construction work for him many years ago. They said he was super nice and down to earth. My mom had a dinner date with George Clooney in the 90s. She didn't really say much apart from the fact that he's an interesting and charismatic guy, but she honestly didn't think he was going to blow up. My mom dated him in high school and went to prom with him. I know this is a small world situation, but man, would it be funnier imagining there's a group of people whose moms dated George Clooney at one point in time. Not me, but my uncle dated the singer Pink in high school for a little while. They went to Central Bucks in Pennsylvania. Pretty neat fun fact, but it always feels a little awkward when someone brings it up at gatherings because he is happily married now. This is also why I don't have any stories to share, lol. Apparently she was super chill and down to earth. My uncle was the type of kid to create napalm in his backyard and set the neighbor's pool on fire, etc. So I've always imagined she probably acted similar at the time, but I could be way wrong. This thread has taught me that as an aunt I really need to up my dating game so my nibblings will have better stories. I think this thread has taught me that a lot of aunts like to make up stories for their nieces and nephews. A friend of my aunt's dated Shel Silverstein for a bit. Apparently he was a bit of a dick. Have it on very good authority he was creep. Not said authority, but friend of mine has an unpublished poem of his. He was in a coffee shop writing like crazy on a legal pad, crumpled the paper and threw it away. She grabbed it out of the trash. There was a poem on the front and back. That little monster kid from the first Mad Max lived next door to us as kids and constantly chased my sister around trying to kiss her. Edit, spelling, and apparently he is in the second movie. My mother dated Judd Nelson back when he was relevant. She said he was kind of a prick once she got to know him better, but his parents were cool. Weirdly, my family now lives like 10 minutes from his parents' place in Maine. My aunt kissed Gordon Lightfoot in a bathroom at one of his concerts. I'm guessing there was probably more, but she didn't elaborate. Sundown, you'd better take care if I find you creeping round my back stair. Edit, yes, it's you've been creeping. I held hands with Isla Fisher in grade 3. We left for school holidays and when we came back she didn't like me anymore. Back when they were still a small bar band, my mother had drinks with the Cult. The lead singer had told her he was in a band, but she didn't believe him. So when they played Wildflower that night, he dedicated the song to her. One of my dad's close friends is Jim Carrey's first wife. Apparently he turned into kind of a dick when he got famous. Shock 8ng, I know. I remember a decade or so ago when their grown kids band was trying to make a living with their music. She really want Jim to help them get bookings and stuff and he was all they need to make it on their own. Then he got a new girlfriend who told him to help his kid out and he did. First wife is still salty about that. I thought it was kind of a not so well kept industry secret that Carrey was a huge dick, doubly so after Katrina White committed suicide. Not a date, per se, but I had a nice quiet dinner with Samantha Fox in her hotel room in Toronto in the 80s. She was in town for a show and I was attached to her security detail. She asked me to eat with her because she didn't want to go out but hated eating alone. Sweet girl, kinda sad too. Lonely. Edit. Well, that blew up. I don't remember a lot of details, what we ate etc. But I do remember we talked about her growing up in the UK and being still amazed at her success. I do remember she said she looked forward to seeing the world on tour, but apparently the world all looked like the same hotel room. She never got to just explore and play tourist. Wow, she seemed like the sexiest woman alive to me when I was young in the 80s. Friend of mine dated Brad Pitt in college. 2 or 3 dates if I remember correctly. I went to a different school, but remember meeting him when I went to visit my friend. A teacher of mine dated Rainn Wilson for 3 months. She said he was a funny and kind man. They also went to Mexico together and when I asked what they did she replied what happens in Mexico, stays in Mexico. I briefly dated Jamie Spears. Well kinda, we spoke a lot on MySpace and she made me number 7 on her top 8. Cheers. Damn, no one talking about Hillary Clinton thing, that's fucking hilarious. My friend dated Dax Shepard in college. She said he's super nice and genuinely funny. Just a good-hearted man. She said he didn't really express much interest in comedy or acting at the time, or ever really, so she was surprised that's what he ended up doing. Mind if I ask what year this was? I'm about 90% convinced he was in a class I taught at UCLA. First time I saw him on television years later, I was just sure it was him. If it was him, he was a pretty sharp guy. R. Kelly asked me out on a date in the mid-90s. I declined because I had a boyfriend at the time. Besides, I was too old for him lol. I once shared a bong with Claire Danes. Does that count? She coughed her lungs out. My uncle is a ski instructor in Northern California and had a coffee date with Pink. My dad was in radio DJing and he actually got to meet her at like a coffee shop or something prior to hosting her on his radio station. Not a date but he still got to spend like an hour or so with her. Turns out my dad and Pink have the same birthday. My sweet nana, who typically only has nice things to say about anyone, was once set up on a date with Chuck Norris through a friend of her cousin. My siblings and I found out shortly after the wide circulation of Chuck Norris facts started, so we couldn't wait to get the details. She told us, he was a lovely man, but honestly a bit of a bore. I dated a girl who went on to be a sort of alternative porn star. We were both 17/18, and she was really nice and we got on really well, but she was almost too obsessed with sex even then. The second time we hung out, she gave me a blowjob in a graveyard. Like, it really couldn't get more emo. And yes, it really was that good. We broke up and kind of lost contact and then I found out she was doing porn. Think she only did it for a little while but it was certainly interesting when I found out. 2 of my high school girlfriends got into the sex industry. One is a very well paid cam girl and another became a porn star. Top 2000 on Pornhub currently. Judging from all the comments on yours, I never could fap to her videos. It was weird. My aunt lived down the street from Leonardo Dicaprio when she was a kid. He was her first kiss. She was 12, he was 13. It was behind the school gym. Apparently he was a really nice kid. She moved away before he started landing roles. Totally lost touch. I dated Flux Pavilion for 7 years. It was great. So we got married in January. I enjoy my own company so the touring isn't really a problem. Edit. I posted that and then felt guilty about such a low effort post. So, it's nice to share my life with a person so creatively fulfilled. I love hearing whatever he's worked on that day when he gets home. I get to tag along to cool places, and it's sweet to see how much people care about his music. I generally don't try to explain what he does when I meet new people because they either won't get it and don't care or they do get it, care too much, and then only want to talk to me about his music. Largely though, just a normal happy marriage. He judges me when I listen to Radio 1. I judge him when his phone isn't on silent. His job isn't much of a factor in our daily life. I married Josh, not Flux Pavilion, really. He's an excellent husband for myriad reasons, and his musical talent is only one of those. Apparently Joe Strummer, the guy from The Clash, pulled my mom on stage to protect her. He kissed her on the cheek and said, "It's okay love, you're fine now." Edit, grammar. Definitely not a date, but I had a similar experience with Bill Clinton once. One time in college I was waiting in line to shake hands with him after an event. When I was next in line, a bunch of dudes ran up to the front, cut in front of me, and I got kinda tousled and tripped backwards. Surprisingly, he kind of pushed through the cutters, pulled me back to the front and asked if I was okay, gave me a wink and shook my hand. I mean, I was a 21-year-old girl at the time, lol, JK, but seriously, I was still surprised at how nice he was about the whole situation. I have a family friend who dated Daniel Radcliffe. I was 7 at the time they dated, and a huge Harry Potter fan. I don't remember much aside from the fact that he was a really sweet guy. On my 8th birthday, my family friend told Daniel it was my birthday and he texted me a personal happy birthday message despite never having met me. Absolutely made it the best birthday ever. Edit, you are all asking why I had a phone at 8 years old. To clarify, Daniel texted from my family friend's phone to my mom's phone, and sadly, I don't still have the message, as my mom's messages were deleted when she got a new phone. I know it sounds unbelievable, but it's true, I swear, on Reddit. I know a girl whose aunt would hook up with Johnny Depp in the early 90s when he was in town. He was pretty reserved, could be very romantic, and enjoyed writing letters. Apparently he also enjoys dressing up in women's clothing during sex. That doesn't surprise me at all, tbh. Not me, but I have an obnoxiously attractive female coworker who is sort of obsessed with gaining an online following. Does the whole Insta ho thing and has 100k followers, you know the deal. A few years back, she tells us that she's dating a guy who plays for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Says that she slept with him the first date, and is trying to lock him down. He's so rich, all the sketchy crap you would hear from someone that obsessive. My buddies and I are diehard Leafs fans, so we're trying to get the name out of her. For those of you who don't know, the NHL has farm teams in the AHL, where there are guys on NHL deals who aren't good enough for the NHL play. So technically they have NHL contracts, but they are getting paid their AHL salaries. Turns out this girl was dating Garrett Sparks, who at the time was the AHL backup goalie. She was really having a difficult time understanding the technicalities of contracts leagues until I pulled up his salary details and explained to her that this guy was making less money than I was. She ghosted him immediately. Fast forward a few years later and Sparks has actually cracked the NHL, barely, and now she goes on about how she used to date an NHL player. She doesn't say the name anymore though. Imagine your one claim to fame in life being that you dated an NHL player. Old neighbor of mine had a coworker US Air Marshal, who sat next to Tom Cruise on a plane. Knew exactly who he was, didn't acknowledge him. After the flight, TC thanks Air Marshal for not making a big deal of sitting next to him and says, "Let me sign something for you." Air Marshal asks, "Who the hell are you?" My college roommate and best friend became YouTube famous over the years. It has been really odd to watch it happen. I've been on trips with her, gone to conventions, seen fans cry over her, and cry over Emmy, which is even odder, and it's a weird balance of totally normal and totally abnormal. When we go out to lunch, sometimes she'll get a fan or two that ask for a picture, but it has changed the way she views the world. Every time she leaves the house, it is stressful for her. She's always worried about how she's looking or acting. She's always been a sweet girl, so she really doesn't have much to worry about, but she stresses so much about being her best self to everyone she meets because you never know who knows her and who doesn't. She's terrified of anyone having anything but a 100% positive experience with her. It can really wear on a person to not be able to let that go. And yes, YouTube famous may not be what OP had in mind, but I'm sure this applies elsewhere. The loss of anonymity is brought up often with celebrity, but I didn't really understand it till I saw her go through it myself. Edit. Hi, it's not Jenna Marbles. I don't want this to turn into a guessing game. I'm sure the experience is a common one. If it sounds like someone you watch, it probably applies to them too. But I won't be saying who my friend is, because I'm not really interested in feeling like I'm using her name for a dead karma or something. I just thought I had something halfway worthwhile to add to this conversation. Wow, that sounds sucky for her, but also amazing to have support like that. We, normal people always fantasize about getting famous like that, but never realizing how much we have sacrificed to get there, like say our personality when going out of the house or meeting and talking to people. Big props to her for trying to make her fans happy when meeting her eye-roll. I know it can be exhausting to act happy like that all the time, and I hope she's doing okay in her private life. Please, if she's ever feeling down, let her know that she's amazing for doing this and getting this far, and to not lose hope in the good in herself and in other people. And yes, I do think YouTube famous counts for this, since many YouTubers, or even Viners, who go onto YouTube later, are recognized by the general public or are featured in films or music, like Cave Town or E.W. Gross the Paul Brothers. Can we know how many subscribers followers she has so we can know how well known she is? If not, it's okay. Thank you for sharing her story. I called Miley Cyrus a fucking bitch when we were like 12 years old. So, I mean, no, I've never dated a celebrity. My mom went on a few dates with Phil Spector when she was young. She wasn't that into him, so she ended up blowing him off. I guess he remained persistent for a bit. She still considers it a missed opportunity, but I'm pretty certain she dodged a major bullet. My friend's grandma got fingered by one of the Beatles at a house party in Liverpool before they were big. Kinda cool. Lol, what grandma tells stories of being fingered. Still funny though. My 4th grade English teacher dated the lead singer of Smash Mouth for a few months. My friend made out with Taylor Swift when they were both in high school. Once they kissed in the basement of some house and everyone used to say he kissed her downstairs. Hilarious. My boyfriend dated a girl who was on The Bachelor, went on a few dates before she went on the show but mostly dated her after. He said her whole life revolved around getting famous and he was just not down for that. Never dated, but Melissa Joan Hart gave me her phone number when we both were 17. I couldn't believe it when my high school friend met Nathan Kress. Now they're married with a kid. Cool and nice guy, life of the party. How do normal people even get the chance to date celebrities? Because I kinda have a celebrity crush on someone who I believe is in my league. My personal experience, work with them or know someone who works with them. Before I worked in the music industry, I had a good friend who did. When he was in town, we would meet up. Met a lot of people this way. Then once I started in the industry, my job revolved around them. Once you have the meeting part out of the way, it's pretty much a normal dating opportunity scenario. I dated a celebrity who was a big deal in her genre but nobody else has probably ever heard of her. It was really nice being moved to the front of the line and having great seats wherever we went. I honestly couldn't deal with the attention she got all the time. She had beautiful women throwing themselves at her, messing with her hair and clothes, touching her. I felt like I could never compete and she could sleep with any one of them whenever she felt like it. Plus she had to be the center of attention. If she wasn't getting enough attention she would create a scene. I also eventually noticed that she wouldn't let on that we were dating. She always said she was single, so that was why she had all these women coming onto her everywhere we went. It felt like a game and I didn't want to play. After we broke up she started dating a jazz musician who thought she was more popular than she actually was. It was very comical seeing them out in public together trying to see who could get the most attention. I was amazed that they could both of their big fat heads in the same car. IDK, who you dated? I dated a non-famous girl who acted the same way on social media. Over 1,000 friends who all wanted to date her and she was always aloof about us. That shit is garbage, hot ass garbage. A total emotional roller coaster of manipulation. I am AO happy you bailed on that disaster. I unknowingly went out with a former porn star a few times. She never really talked about her past work. I didn't find out until I was doing research online. It is weird feeling seeing someone you went out with getting fucked by 8 or 9 random dudes. I'm definitely coming late, but I love to tell this story. So, 2 years ago I'm at my grandma's house for Christmas and my uncle comes with a new girlfriend. So I glance at her and you can only imagine my feelings when I recognize Sasha fucking Gray. She was very nice BTW. Here's a pic of her with my grandpa, IMGA webpage. A fairly close acquaintance of mine at the time went on a few dates with Natalie Portman when they were both at Harvard around 2002. He said she was exceptionally down to earth, genuine, and very engaging. Edit. Okay, honestly, what the actual fuck? Reddit is the fucking Twilight Zone. I just thought it was a cool anecdote from my younger and more vulnerable years. Apart from a few holiday break college parties, I barely knew the guy. It was like a 20-minute convo from 18 years ago. And he didn't even bring it up, resisting the topic altogether. My childhood best friend egged him into sharing what little details I recall. I really don't know anything about Natalie Portman, but here's what I do know. She is so fucking cool, that a guy she dumped after just a few dates, was so fucking cool that he hesitated to even publicly acknowledge ever dating her. And after all, he lost the girl, so I completely understand his trepidation. A guy that humble, reserved, and mature at such a young age is fucking cool. But obviously just cool enough for 3 dates with Natalie Portman. Honestly, that 20-minute story told me everything about how fucking cool Natalie Portman is. She's fine. It's her asshole boyfriend from Asgard you have to watch out for. Rosario Dawson liked 2 of my tweets once, so you could say it was getting pretty serious. Donald Glover responded to mine back when he was active on Twitter. I feel this. When I was a teenager my friend said she dated one of the Backstreet Boys, but she was lying. So I just cut out the middleman for you. I met a girl at camp when I was in middle school. She said her friend secretly had AJ's baby. There was a whole story along with that statement to make it sound plausible. I believed it much longer than I should have. Willie Nelson visited my mom's garden before one of his concerts. It's a community garden across the street from the venue. She fed him carrots and they smoked a J. She liked him a lot. Now, apparently any time he goes back to do a concert there, he checks to see if she's at the garden. Not me, but my aunt dated Weird Al Yankovic when she was in her mid-20s. I wasn't alive back then, but my family tells me he was a genuinely funny person in a way you wouldn't very much expect. I can't personally give any examples, but my dad and aunt have plenty of stories. One of my much older cousins actually has a signed guitar that Al played with in a live show. My aunt and Al met from my dad being a radio DJ as a teenager, and he met a lot of celebrities through that. Mostly 90s and early 2000s pop and country stars. But anyways, the station my dad worked at threw Weird Al a birthday party, and my aunt just happened to be there, and they ended up together for a decent amount of time. Every once in a while Al will come into town to say hi to her. Even though they aren't together, they are still friends. And no, Al isn't cheating on his wife with my aunt. My aunt's a strong married Christian, and I am more than 100% sure she wouldn't do that. One of these days I might end up meeting him, which I think would be pretty cool. Edit. Thank you everyone for all the upvotes. I've never gotten this many before. My record before this was like 200, so this is absolutely nuts. It's really made my day. My friend and her best friend went to John Mayer concert with VIP tickets. At the after party, he offered them both drinks and her best friend ended up going to his limo after being invited. He apparently told her to get undressed and lay on the floor of the limo and proceeded to jerk off on top of her. Then thanked her and told his security to open the limo door. Based off stories from a friend that personally knows JM, I completely believe this story. My cousin's half Sister is married to a guy who starred in a few Lifetime movies about 15 years ago and was a Kohl's catalog model. He now works for her dad's insurance company and takes Instagram pictures of his wife and their average looking child daily. Nice guy, to be fair. Thanks for the "Where Are They Now" bonus content. I always wondered what happened to that guy. The guy who works in my warehouse hooked up with the red-headed chick from the sexual harassment video and he's like 90% sure. I married the lead singer of my favorite band. The band is only moderately popular in the US now, but the band he fronted in the late 90s is apparently still pretty popular in Europe. He's down to earth, unassuming, humble, and dating him was always so much fun. I'm an artist and he helped me out at a convention not long after we got serious and he drew such a crowd the organizers asked him to put a costume on for the next day because the crowding in the aisle was causing safety issues. Other than stuff like that, life is fairly normal. Edit, I should have used a throwaway lol. I can't reveal who he is or what band, since I use Reddit to vent about my family, job, etc. and have to keep my own anonymity. Some old dude at the community college I went to would never shut up about how he banged Eartha Kitt in an airplane bathroom. My cousin is going to kill me for this, but she dates Steve from Blue's Clues about 10 years ago. Apparently he was kinda weird and was a dick to her and her mom. All I really know is that they dated for like 3 years and things were going well at the time and he just basically ghosted her one day. Posted this before. Not really a celebrity and I did not know when we first met that she was famous. I had a brief friendship relationship with a former porn star. She was a really nice woman and when I was aware of her fame it did not cause any problems. Every now and then someone would go wide-eyed when they saw her. Men tended to just look and if they had friends they would point her out to them. Women were much more upfront. They would say things like "I loved that scene with you and whatever guy, and they would usually say a particular position that was their favorite. That even happened when we were sitting together having lunch. So I've got 3 stories. The first story is mine, and it's not really that dramatic. A couple of years ago, I met a guy who was the lead singer of a band at a local show. The venue was kind of shitty. It was at a big storage unit that had been converted, and the other bands weren't too great, but his band was headlining the show. They played their set and then were standing around drinking with everyone who had come, probably like 30 people. I walked up to him and told him I'd really enjoyed their set, and we ended up talking for about an hour. We continued texting for about 4 or 5 months, never really dated but we enjoyed each other. His band just got signed and released their first album, and he's dating a girl who seems to be really sweet. Plus, I'm still friends with him on Facebook, and he recently changed his name and privacy settings, so I feel a little cool about him keeping me on his friend list. The second story is pretty much the same, but is about my little sister. She moved up to Nashville a couple years ago for school, and met an up-and-coming musician. They hooked up a few times, but eventually called it quits because he's a couple years older than her and wanted her to be able to enjoy college without getting wrapped up in him. Quality guy, and his albums are pretty good. The third story is about my mom, who went to an Allman Brothers show in like 79 or 80, which would have made her 20 or 21 at the time. She told me that she didn't really know who they were, but her friend had asked her to go, so she went. So after the show, she's standing outside smoking and this guy walks up behind her and taps her on the shoulder. She says that he said, "You're gonna come home with me tonight," or something along those lines that's equal parts creepy and pompous. So mom goes, "No I'm not," then turns back around to her friend, who is apparently awestruck and mom doesn't know why, so the guy steps around and is like, "Do you know who I am?" And mom goes, "No. And I really don't want to." Then she drops a cigarette and stamps it out and grabs her friend and goes to the bar. Anyway, apparently that was Greg Allman. She told me that story a few years ago, and I lost my mind. At one point, I even said, "Mom, I could have been his kid." And she laughed and told me not to tell Dad. So, those are things that kinda fit here, I think lol. Greg Allman hit on my mom too. She was 15. Her first job was at a concert venue. My mom went on a few dates with Ted Cruz in college. They were both in college Republicans at different schools and met at the 94 RNC. She ended up not calling him back after a few dates because she said he always talked like he was giving a speech, but apparently he was planning on running for president even back then in his 20s. Not me, but my best friend in middle school dated the girl that was on the TLC show My Strange Addiction because she was addicted to looking like a doll. Not a dating story, but I still find it memorable. I grew up without a TV, so I never watched movies as a kid. One year when I was 12, I went to a summer camp and became good friends with a girl for the duration of the camp. One day, she goes, "My dad is an actor. His name is Paul Walker," and I was like, cool. I don't watch movies, so I don't know who that is, and we continued playing. We stayed in touch until a few years later when he passed away, which was when I realized who he was. R.I.P. legend. That sounds like a situation my cousin was in. Back in the 1990s, my cousin was good friends with a girl in her class. The girl's dad was an actor, and when he'd come to talk with the teachers, all the moms would freak. My cousin and her friend, who were both about 8, had no idea why he was so popular. They just knew he was on TV and the show came on past their bedtimes. So they didn't see the show until they were older. The show he was on was a small hit called Her, and the dad was an actor named Anthony Edwards, also known as Mark Green, one of the leading stars of that show. So yeah, my cousin was classmates and friends with a girl whose dad was in one of the biggest shows of the 90s. She also got to spend the night at her house. Friend of mine dated Jake Paul for a while. She said he was a huge dick back then too. Although technically not a date, I did spend time with Katy Perry before fame. She was playing Warped Tour right before I Kissed a Girl came out, so she was not recognizable. In a hoe, I was chilling by one of the large fans to cool off when this dark-haired girl came up and asked why I was alone. We hung out for like 10 minutes talking about random shit, then she told me to come see her band. Unfortunately, my brother, wanted to leave early. Fortunately, the exit was past the side stage, which she was playing as we left. I noticed her phenomenal stage presence, and when she sang the titular I Kissed a Girl line, I thought it was funner but nothing more. A few months later it was everywhere. My friend's mom dated Arnold Schwarzenegger back in the 80s when he was opening up his gyms. Apparently he was quite full of himself and would draw little pictures of himself flexing in the letters he would send her. She broke up with him. Not me, but my physics and geology teachers aunt dated Mandy Patinkin for a bit. He has some cool stories. Dated an NFL player, rookie at the time, so not very well known. Sucked because the whole time we dated, he kept me at arm's length, thinking I was just using him for his status. I really genuinely liked him. He dumped me pretty brutally, and I met my husband 4 days later, who is now a coach for a different NFL team, oddly enough. When I lived in Ireland, a girl I went to college with dated David Tennant for a bit. Said he was super sweet. This one's current, so I'm not naming names. A co-worker mentor is besties with a group of Broadway stars, several of whom are now big name movie and TV stars. He knew them before their rise to stardom. He and one of the stars jokingly flirt with each other, but honestly, they'd make such a gorgeous couple that I wish it weren't a joke. I'm waiting for the day I get the news of their engagement. Edit, y'all. I'm not saying who the group is. Please stop guessing, or at least don't expect me to respond to the guesses. Celebs deserve their privacy, too. My dad's ex's sister dated Michael Stipe from R.E.M. for a while. She's the one in the white dress in the music video, the one I love. I went on a few dates with a drummer in a, at the time, small local band. It ended in a really awkward drunk hookup and him moving to a bigger city. Fast forward and they've blown up a bit. They got referenced on a big TV show about 8 years ago. Them as a person, not the band. And are now on the music at my work. So I'm forced to listen to them every day. It's an awful song as well. My mom got asked out by Johnny Depp at a bus stop when he was just getting famous from 21 Jump Street. My mom was a young actress and model at the time. My grandma has pictures of her modeling days, and it's weird to admit as a son, but she was absolutely stunning. He played it cool, told her his name was Johnny and asked her if she wanted to get dinner sometime. She recognized him but she tried not to let on. She was dating my biological father at the time, and graciously refused his invitation. It's kinda weird to think about, like my mom might have dated him, but I never would have been born if she did. Thanks for being faithful, Mom. I had one date with comedian whose name rhymes with Schmanable Schmuris. He didn't offer me one drink, took a nap while I was sitting next to him, and was very hard to talk to. At some point I gathered all my strength, got up and said, hey, you know what, I'm just gonna go. Afterwards I messaged him saying that if he didn't want company, he shouldn't have asked for it. He then called me an egomaniac. I still have the screenshots. I was pissed back then, but now they just make me laugh. What a socially impaired guy. Closest I ever got to a date was when I went for a pee down an alley in Antibes, France, as I was staying out there for work. Peeing on this wall, and then about 6 Jeep things all turn up and Leonardo Dicaprio jumps out, George Clooney and his wife, Robert De Niro, 3 Kardashians and Kendall Jenner all got out. Turned out the one place I decided to pee on was the 2016 Cannes Film Festival after party restaurant. I remember seeing all of them walk past me and look at me like scum. But to me it was like holy fuck, what is going on, this is the best day of my life. My boss was Steven Tyler's inspiration for Love in an Elevator for obvious reasons. Not me, but my aunt dated Logan and Jake Paul's father, Greg Paul. Only went on 2 dates with him, figured he was kind of an asshole. I didn't date but slept with Amber Heard a couple of times in high school. She was nice, a little quiet, liked to drink and chill, but she always said weird things like, I'm gonna be famous one day, wait and see. And we would laugh. Look who's laughing now, I guess. She was a private school girl that would hang out with us public schoolers on weekends. She was fun. Not a date, but Justin Bieber asked me to go to his hotel room. Well, it wasn't Justin himself, it was his bodyguard. I said no as soon as he told me I had to give them my phone. Fuck that. The real answer, non-disclosure agreements and some good stories you aren't allowed to tell anyone. Nobody dated a celebrity, but my uncle used to open up for Prince in Minneapolis back in the day. He said Prince was notorious for disappearing in the middle of conversations with people and was nowhere to be found. People would turn around for a second when talking to him and he would seemingly disappear in this air. She may not be a celebrity to you, but she is to me. I dated a scientist at the forefront of HIV research. She once cancelled a date with me because her team was invited to a Nobel laureates conference and had to leave for Germany the next morning. She knew it sounded ridiculous or even fake, but she assured me it really happening. And sure enough, the website for the event was posting pictures of the various panels and galas, and there she was in the audience. Unfortunately, I couldn't handle the fact this person in front of me might be interested in me. I couldn't believe it, and it colored our future dates. My questions became less about her and her life and became all about her research and research techniques, as well as the amazingly talented people around her. She would eventually stop talking to me and move on. I really wish I could have at least pretended she was in my league and also better shown I was interested in her. And maybe tried harder to show how interesting I am, that I have potential. Dr. Jones, if you're reading this, I would be very, very surprised if you are single. You're beautiful, talented, funny and intimidatingly smart. Should you be available, though, hit me up. Uma Thurman smiled at me once, so we're practically engaged to each other. Not sure if this counts because the guy I dated wasn't like A-list famous, but was famous enough that their band has a large following. They tour overseas as well as around the US. Nothing crazy ever really happened. Sometimes we'd be out and someone would recognize him and ask for a selfie and then would stand around and make small talk. He'd be gone for long stretches while they were touring. We're not together anymore, but we're still friendly. Chat on Instagram or via text every now and then. Overall it wasn't unlike dating someone non-famous. Just more conversations with random strangers when you were out. We didn't have paparazzi stalking his every move or anything. Not thrilling and kind of random, but several years ago a friend of mine had a one-night stand with one of the dudes from Ghost Hunters when they filmed an early episode nearby. She had nothing but nice things to say about him. Going to get buried, but I dated someone in high school who is now a famous musician. He was very cool, but he was not a good boyfriend. He was always trying to hang out with older, cooler people and was not very nice to me in public, but in private he was very sweet and confessed to me a lot of insecurities and frustrations. He cheated on me a ton of times and we broke up in college. In hindsight, he had a very strong sense of who he wanted to be and how he wanted to be perceived and pursued it relentlessly, and I'm sure that is part of why he's successful. He got divorced recently and sent me some flirty texts out of the blue, but I ignored them because I'm a happily married normal person. My friend went on a date with Dwight Howard and she said he was weird as hell. They went to his house after, and when she pulled up he walked out in one of those pajama onesies. Dated a local minor celebrity. Ever been out with someone and the someone random you don't know comes up and they talk and you don't get introduced? It's like that all the time. I dated an international athlete, won't mention names. He complained about the distant relationship he had with his mother on every date we had, then he cried about it after we had sex. After the fourth time, I was like, fuck this. This is too weird. I'm out. I was then barraged with drunken slobbery calls, messages accusing me of being just like her. It sucks, because he was fucking awesome lay. The ones with mommy issues are thoroughly fucked up and will thoroughly fuck you up. Edit. Wow. Thank you guys so much. And thank you for the award. Now I feel like a celebrity. I have two, crazily enough, both forever ago. One a musician, nearly married the guy. In private he was super chill, fun, loved doing things with me and my kid, kinda dorky and sweet, average guy. When we were out off, someone came up to him, he acted so different, like he flipped a switch and was acting like the smooth cool guy. Found out he was cheating, told me it was just part of the job. He had a top song on the billboards when we broke up and it was so popular I couldn't go anywhere without that song coming on and instantly getting pissed off. We're friends now and keep in touch. Recently saw him when he was touring in my city and invited me and a friend to see them perform. The other guy was normal enough, down to earth and very sweet. Only saw him for a bit before finding out he was part of a very high profile case for a financial crime, and last time I saw him he told me he was probably going to prison. 2 weeks later he was on national news. Since then I've seen a documentary involving it, and every once in a while I'll see it mentioned on a crime show. Met the musician in a bar. Met the second guy online dating. Another guy, not sure he counts. I'm not into political news, but if someone is into that they might know him. He's often one of those expert opinion guys they have on CNN. Didn't last long, only one date. He was sleazy and kept asking for nude pics. Met him while out for dinner with friends. He asked me for my number when I was on my way to the bathroom. Dated someone that made the news for killing a person in an unusual way. Wasn't terribly surprised considering their family. Amazingly, no one in my family ever brought it up in an argument, but I was pretty embarrassed by it. A friend was going to set me up with Eazy-E in high school. Very thankful that didn't pan out and I'm still alive. My mom went on one date with Bryan Adams, and said she hated it. He was way too full of himself. I didn't actually date a celebrity, but I met quite a few at an old job. I worked at a recording studio which had a lot of celebrities come through. Pretty much all dudes, though. Heidi Klum came in once. We were all excited. She was our first supermodel. When she arrived, she just seemed like a normal lady, pretty, but not blow your socks off gorgeous. She was wearing a baseball cap, and sunglasses, jeans and a button-down shirt. A bit disappointing, really. She did her recording session. My boss recorded her, and when she was done, she came out without the glasses on. I opened the door for her, and, as she left, she went the wrong way down the hall. A common mistake at that studio, Mrs. Klum said I, and I pointed the other direction. The elevator is that way. Oh. Thank you, she said, and smiled at me. That smile was like being hit with a brick. I seriously forgot my name for a full minute. That's all it took to understand how she became a model. Goddamn. I had a friend that went on a date with an Academy Award winning actress. A friend of a friend made the initial connection and then he took it from there. The idiot was way out of his league. He told me at one point he started talking about how manure is actually a good word. Anyway, it didn't go anywhere as it inevitably came up that my friend was engaged and was pursuing the actress. Despite this, she punched him and left him on a park bench. Dated a sideline reporter for a major network. I won't give her name, but she's great at her job. She was very sweet and we both couldn't sustain a relationship under our respective travel work schedules. Her job became her life and I still keep contact with her. The last time we spoke she said she was at her townhouse 32 days in 2019. I feel sorry for her because she is clearly lonely, but this is her choice. A friend of mine was engaged to Evangeline Lilly for a time and she ditched him once she started to get famous. Likely not the only reason that their engagement ended, but the timing was quite coincidental. A friend of mine was picked out of a club dance floor by Usain Bolt's security detail for the sexoning. She's totally tired of hearing the whole "so was he" fast thing, but we all still do it anyway and always will. Abigail. Many years ago, Shuffle's walking frame, I dated a guy who had an uncanny resemblance to a popular local TV movie and theater actor. NZ is a pretty small place, so it isn't unusual to run into celebs from time to time. Occasionally he'd get girls freaking out from a distance and running up only for them to die of shame when they got closer. I imagine he got pretty good mileage out of this when I wasn't around, so I kept him on a pretty tight leash, lol. I dated a fairly famous director. I was working as a production assistant on one of his films, and he singled me out, walked up to me and asked me out. APA is literally the lowest person on the food chain on a movie production. So of course I was going to say yes to the fucking director who asked me out. We ended up going out to dinner once, after which he left me a key to his hotel room, and well, whatever you imagine from there actually happened. It was near Thanksgiving, and he wasn't going home till over the short break, so he came and had dinner with my family for Thanksgiving. After the production ended and he left town, I emailed him a few times, but honestly we had nothing in common and he was ugly. A Woody Allen looking dude. He's more famous now than he was then, though I wouldn't necessarily call him a celebrity because 99% of you wouldn't recognize him if you saw him, but you'd know his name. And it isn't hard to figure it out from what I've said. TBH, he was a total asshole, and had I not been 19 at the time, I'd have laughed in his face. Edit, I really don't want to get sued. Created a throwaway for privacy purposes and not getting my ass sued for slander. Dated a decently well-known actress for about a year. There were definitely elements of it that were fun and elements that were not. She is noticeable, so when we went on dates she either always wanted to go out when no one was around, late at night or early in the morning, or if we went when it was busy she probably got pulled aside once or twice for a photo. Really wasn't the end of the world, but she always made sure I wasn't in the photos because she enjoyed having some level of privacy in her life, which I tried to respect. The primary issue was the whole drama she had to put on when she was dating me. When we started she told me sleeping around was basically just part of the job. She wanders off with some guy and there's news articles they're most likely true. So it was probably once every other month she basically said I wouldn't hear from her for a couple of days. And then I see some report that she is now sleeping with X person. I put up with it for a while because she was okay with me seeing other people in the meantime. I only did once and I didn't enjoy it. And dating a celebrity has its bonuses. She paid for almost everything, went on some fun trips, etc. Wouldn't really recommend it to anyone out there though for the long term. I'm mid-20s right now, and from what I saw every celebrity in that age range is basically cheating 24/7. Edit. Formatting. She also uses Reddit pretty often, so if she does, easily the best pie I've ever had to eat still. Edit 2. Just to answer some questions I've gotten in DMs, how did you two meet? Her brother was one of my best friends in college. After senior year, summer 2017, a bunch of our friends went on a trip. His sister came along because she was missing out on the whole college experience thing. Why did it end? Mostly the cheating. You try waking up and seeing an article that your GF is banging some dude then texting her in the morning. It was just a bit too much for me to handle. Did you meet any other celebrities? No, not really. She very much tried to keep me out of her celebrity life. Was she normal to hang out with? Like, was the fame noticeable? As normal as it could get. She's a super nice gal. I really don't have anything bad to say about her. You could claim that cheating was bad, but she was very point blank with me about it from the start. Really only myself to blame for that. She said she liked being with me because everything else she does is very much for show and being herself was a lot easier. A friend of a friend dated a well-known actress and this was pretty much his experience, too. Not so much the cheating part, but the separation between her real self and the celebrity part of her life. They'd be having a normal conversation or doing an average date activity and suddenly there were cameras, autographs, etc., and she was on stage. She would also end up having to go on celebrity dates set up by her management that were just for publicity. There was an English actor that was up and coming, so it was arranged for them to be caught by paparazzi as they were coming out of a restaurant. My dad knew some guys who peed on Tom Cruise in high school. Close enough to dating. Not my story, but a musician I know in La. Started dating this struggling actress, and things were going pretty good, and even moved in together. He eventually worked his way into touring with John Legend, and he was away from home all the time. She put on a one-woman show, expecting him to be there, but he ended up bailing to do a cover shoot with the group. They broke up soon after. Later, he gets a call from a casting director who saw the show. He forwards the message, and she goes to audition. She gets the part, spends 7 months shooting in Paris, and next thing you know, she's a hit. Fast forward 5 years and she's a Hollywood regular with a husband and a kid, and he runs a jazz club in La. I realized where this was going at touring with John Legend. Well played. My godmother's daughter dated Justin Bieber. She doesn't like to talk about it. My old roommate dated Tommy Lahren. She was a cunt and a half and refused to call me by my real name. I think it's karma that people intentionally say her name wrong now. Oh, and she always went out her way to get recognized in public. He wasn't really a celebrity, just kind of like a B-movie actor, but in porn. Like a B-movie actor, but in porn. And X200B, wouldn't that make him a D-list actor? An exceptional lover. Then again, what else would you expect from Danny Devito? I know people in metal band, but that's the end of the line for knowing famous PPL for me. I'm married to Cole from Nile, but I don't think he's a big enough celebrity for this thread, lol. My mom got hit on by Bob Seger before he hit it big. A mutual friend introduced her and they hit it off well, but she was a young single mom at the time and wasn't dating much. I'm pretty disappointed that I'm not the child of Bob Seger, but what can ya do? When I was an extra for a movie Josh Hartnett and Rosario Dawson were working on, Josh had to walk off towards me during a particular scene, and as I stared at him in awe he proceeded to check out my boobs. Even asked for my name. Once I worked up the courage to introduce myself and got a hug. So you could say things got pretty serious. He and Rosario were super cool for sure. Wish I would have hung out longer but had to work early in the morning. Mistakes were made. I awkwardly took a picture with The Rock and put my arm around his waist because I didn't know what to do with my hand. Not a celebrity, but I used to date someone that had an uncanny resemblance to Selena Gomez. To the point where it actually affected her daily life. We rarely went anywhere without someone approaching her, kids asking for pictures and autographs, etc. So I kind of did the video game version of dating a celebrity. I'm going to make this as short as possible. I had matched up with this woman on some site. We talked for a while through text or whatever. Didn't put much weight in it. Talked for about 2 or 3 weeks. She invites me over to her house. Turns out it was a mansion. Said she will cook me dinner. Cool. She invites me in. Remember, huge house. It's completely empty except for a couch and a desk with a computer in the living room. No photos, nothing on the wall. Completely empty except for those items. I wasn't even sure what she was cooked with because I could only assume there was also nothing in the kitchen too. She's in the kitchen. I ask her, because it's awkward sitting in an empty room by yourself, can I play some music? She says, sure. I've got some on my computer. I go into the music folder, and there's all these files that I got no idea what they are. I'm curious, so I double click one. Unbeknownst to me, apparently she had really been rocking out previously that day because the speakers were already full blast. So I got the computer playing as loud as it could possibly go. The only problem was that what I had clicked on was not music at all. It started at the crotch of a woman getting, yeah, no. So since the speakers were up full blast, my date heard from the kitchen and came sprinting down the quarter-mile long hallway. Felt slow-mo. Imagine it slow-mo. My eyes move back to the screen as this very intense cute ritual is still in play. My date is running and yelling no. The screen is moving up as the scene progresses. She says no. Stop. I am like, yo, I've seen stuff like this before. All good, you are not perverting my young virgin mind. She says no, there's something I didn't tell you. As the camera had been panning up, I realized it was her. I looked at her and she says I make adult movies. She cooked me fish, mashed potatoes and asparagus. Meal was good. Had work in the morning. She said if you stay I'll make it worth your while. Slept well. I dated a professional model and actress. You've probably seen in face-in ads as well as some shows. Work was a constant thing on her mind. The show she's auditioning for, Hollywood's Inner Workings. I really enjoyed hearing her goals and aspirations. She's very driven and I like that. I dated Tyler Tequila. Sex was good. Batshit crazy though. Nope, TF out of there when she started on her racist shit. I once dated Medusa for a while. She was nice and she could make me hard with just one look. This will probably be buried, but fuck it. Created a throwaway for this, but I'm actually dating one right now. Have been for a while. It's a lot harder, especially when it's still a secret. Ours still is. I do imagine it'd be harder if the news broke though. You have to sneak around, lie to most of your family, especially younger relatives, in my case, that might know them, about who you're dating. You can't really post photos of yourself and them, or you have the possibility of it getting leaked. It's also extremely hard to go on dates, if you ever can, because there's always the chance of them being recognized. Not to mention the time zone differences at times, and the long distances where you don't talk to them, because they are either busy, in a totally different time zone, or traveling. Now, bear in mind, the person I'm dating is from a different country than America, where celebrity status is held to a different standard than it is here, so this may be a unique experience compared to other people in the thread, but I figured this would be some good insight as well. I dated a girl who was in my country's The Voice, and, after that, she won a big international festival. Didn't go very well. She's kind of a diva and I also have a big ego, so we collided. One day after a party we returned home and she was obviously mad. I asked what happened and she said she didn't feel appreciated that night. I've been talking to other people and she wasn't the center of attention. We broke up that same night. We are currently friends. A friend of mine dated the Six Flags dancing bald old man guy. He said everywhere they went he was mobbed. I went to high school and had a won't they relationship with a girl who ended up a Playboy centerfold. We never did actually date. She was surprisingly dorky and needy, insecure for as good looking as she was. It was kind of a turn off. I fucked a guy who's now in the WWE. Does that count? I'm pretty proud of it, I won't lie. No, I will not tell you who. Edit. I feel like I need to host an AML. I'll keep trying. I dated Mike Wazowski. He was a very down-to-earth, interesting guy, but he doesn't have a nose. I dated a girl that's now famous YouTube for a little over 7 months. Not a celebrity per se, but famous enough that people knew who she was. She does vlogs and just goofy stuff, but now has around 8.5 million subscribers on YouTube. She was really nice, but YouTube just consumed her life. She had dropped out of high school a couple of months before I met her just to pursue streaming. We're both pretty young, still under 20, and I wanted to be a normal teenager and not caught up in her lifestyle. It was insane to me and honestly really made me uncomfortable when people would approach us when we were out on a date or just hanging out. They would be pushy and rude, and actually grab her and try to hug her. One time there was even a reporter from a magazine who would just follow us around even when we asked her to leave us alone. Just really uncomfortable all around. We broke it off when I left California with my family. We still talk occasionally, but she's always busy with content and that super fast-paced lifestyle. Edit. I should say that when we were dating she had around 2.7 million followers. She currently has 8.5. Well, I can't say I ever dated a celeb, but I worked in TV for a long time and was friends with plenty. Honestly, they're for the most part just regular people. They do get a lot of stares when you're out in public and the occasional autograph request. I did sign one once when someone assumed I must be a celebrity too. But for the most part people are nice. I can't tell people in real life because they will never believe me, and I guess you guys will probably call me a liar too, but whatever. I went on a date with Taylor Swift before she got super famous. It was right out of high school, when she was making a name for herself, but not yet a gigantic deal. I knew her because we lived near each other. It was the craziest thing, really. I only asked her out on a dare because even not famous, she was way out of my league. But it turns out she was really nice and enjoyed the opportunity to go hang out for a while. She always had a reputation as a girl who burns the candle at both ends, and she's always stressed, so I think she just wanted to relax. It was a pretty basic just out of high school date. We went to see a movie and I got to feel like a jackass rolling up to her super nice house in my post-Datsun honeybee. Don't let her early work fool you, she's a rich kid. Anyway, onto the crap you guys are actually wanting to hear about. So, after the movie and some dinner, we go back to my place to listen to some music. After a while, she pretends to be interested in checking out the hiking trails out behind my house. She said she really enjoys being out in the woods, but I figured she just wanted to be away from my parents. So we get out into the woods and very quickly get into some heavy making out. Clothes go everywhere, and that's when this story starts to take its turn. Gentlemen, I have some things to tell you about Taylor Swift. First thing, turns out she loves giving head. Pretty much the most enthusiastic beach of my life happened on that trail. She couldn't get enough. However, she's terrible at it. She's got heart, but I hope for all future guys' sakes that she took some lessons. She's all teeth, and she's got that thing where her tongue is just ridiculously rough. After a while of that, we get down to the main event. Another thing you should know about her is that she is somewhat hairier than one might expect from a super hot rich girl. I never got to ask her what was up with that, actually. So anyway, we're getting our awkward teenage bone on, and she's just as crazy as she was before. Except this time she's just straight up clawing my back to shreds. I'm not going to pretend I didn't make it where I needed to go, but goddamn I was expecting some kind of revelation from her. It was one of those things where it is so disappointing because you had expected so much from it. So, after it was all said and done, we're putting our clothes back on, when I notice that I'm actually bleeding from my back. I had known she had her heart in it, but I didn't expect for her to draw blood. But then I noticed her nails were longer and sharper than I had noticed before. And that's when I started to put it all together. She clawed my back. Her BJ was all teeth. She likes being in the woods. She went on a date with a guy driving a Datsun honeybee. Guys, Taylor Swift is a motherfucking there. I must have shown on my face when I put it all together, because she got a glint in her beady black eyes and roared. I didn't even bother putting my clothes back on, I just ran for dear life. Luckily, I knew the woods behind my house better than she did. Even more luckily, I was able to squeeze through some spots that her 1,000-pound frame just couldn't get. Winter was coming soon. I knew if she caught me I'd be killed and stuffed into the cave she cleverly disguised as an expansive suburban home so that she could keep her energy up before hibernation began. I eventually wound up hiding in a stump by a stream until she gave up and left. It was the most frightened I've ever been in my life. I had an affair with Danny Devito. He has a magnum dong. He consumes a dozen eggs a day, and he gets a once-a-year blowjob from Rob, Charlie, or Glenn. You really should have a serious replies only tag, buddy. She brought over all her celebrity girlfriends, and told me that I should have put a serious tag before showing them my P-worm.